¿Qué pasa?
Muy bien, mi amigo. But I don't know if that's Catalonian or not, to be honest.
I have no idea.
Notice no garage, no New Jersey garage. This is it.
This is big
This is
news
it.
for the Shot of Digital Health Therapy season 3
Three
something.
episode something, but I actually was looking earlier, so I think I did one out of Berlin when Marina and I went to like pack all the stuff up in June,
Right.
and then just few weeks ago from Florence.
Right.
You've been stable in Ireland, but
Yeah, I did one from
a couple of
Dingle.
locations.
I almost did it from Edinburgh tonight because I had to go over there, but I'm in Dublin, so it's just still Dublin in my office. It's between my office and my home. I think that's the only locations I've done. Correct?
Okay, yeah, I think so. But we can have whenever we get an intern for our big media empire here, we'll get them to do some retrospectives. But yeah,
So
this is
Barcelona.
We came in Monday. I don't know. Usually, like jet lag is kind of okay. I don't jet lag, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
This time it's like Wednesday already, and I'm still kind of weirded out. This is weird. Doing this at 8 p.m. and it's not sunny anymore.
Okay.
So outside.
So you have to obviously kind of quarantine a bit or stay in.
So there is no restriction. We're kind of doing doing the testing ourselves, right? So there are no there is a QR code coming in that you have to register and stuff. There is no requirement to quarantine.
Okay.
Nothing was told. So we're we're kind of
cautious.
We're not seeing any friends or anything. Our friend Anish was came as a welcoming committee from far away, but that was nice. But otherwise, we're staying sort of put. Obviously, lots of people in the whole digital health space are here. We'd love to see them all, but just hang tight.
Yeah, that's great. So it
anyway.
all starts then. So how are you feeling? Like it's kind of excitement or difference or confused?
Super excited. Now I just need to figure out, the whole schedule thing. Like I still have the US calls go way late because they've been pre-scheduled. So now I just need to figure all that stuff out, settle in, looking at places and things like that. So
fantastic.
Oh, good. But
back to Europe, we got you back. We got
you back. Yes, exactly. Happy to be back here.
I'm definitely going to go do an episode from Barcelona because I'm dying for a bit of warm weather, man. I'm definitely.
At any time, honestly, we're just looking at this, just gorgeous weather. Today I think tonight it's gonna rain a little, but then back to sunshine. So that's why we're here. Sunshine, great people, great food. However, on our situation update, I have not read it, but I already heard the next lockdown limited. No restaurants or bars for 15 days. I think starts Friday. So we'll see what this all brings. But just in time for another lockdown, the Burhovich family has landed.
You guys are flying in like seagulls.
Anyway,
right, so what do we got going on?
So we got our guest today. Is waiting in the waiting room already. I met her, I guess, sometime early 19.
Okay.
And I'll let her do the introduction, but I'll kind of pre-announce her as Mimi Billing from Sifted, which kind of came on the scene. I've never heard of it up until it came on the scene. Okay. Apparently invested by Financial Times and just covering startups across Europe. And Mimi specifically been covering mainly digital health. So this should be a good shot of digital health therapy. So I'm going to let Mimi in.
Okay, great. And she's, is she originally from Stockholm or she's?
We'll find out from Mimi.
Great.
Hi there.
Hey.
Hi, Mimi. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I realized that I'm sitting here in almost complete darkness in the middle of Sweden in the countryside, and it just doesn't seem like you are doing the same thing, right?
The midnight sun there? Or
no, Jim is in Dublin. I'm now, as of Monday, in Barcelona. So came back to this side of the pond. But your scenery looks like, you know, those night vision glasses that you can see. It's like a little greenish, so it's perfect.
Well, I didn't realize there would be video as well. So I mean, you're lucky that you can see this at least. So no, yeah.
It's all good. So Mimi, I was just telling Jim, you know, you and I
Nice to
met.
meet you.
Yeah, so this is Jim, Mimi. You know, the
Hi,
whole
Jim.
process here was supposed to mimic a bar conversation. So somebody knows somebody, and I introduce them, or vice versa. And we're going to talk about digital health. I just realized actually I don't have any drinks in this household yet. So today I'm not going to take any shots. But yeah, so I was telling Jim that you and I met, I think, in Stockholm at one of the events. And I think when you reached out to be on a panel, my question was, what the hell is Sifted? I've never heard of it. This was like, I think, early 2019. So maybe just give our audience a little bit about your background and actually a little bit more about Sifted.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't know that much about Sifted either in the late 2018, but it was because it didn't start until then. So this site is Sifted is, or if I can do some advertisement, sifted.eu is a European tech site on the startup site. And we focus on the whole of Europe, and we're trying to, I mean, do something a little bit different than maybe most other media does. We're trying to go more in depth into each and every story, even if it's, you know, obviously in the beginning we said we're not going to write about any financial rounds, and now we do. But if we do, we always try to dig a little bit deeper. Why is it interesting? What's happening to the whole kind of sector in whatever sector we go into? So it was actually founded by the innovation editor, John Thornhill, as well as a techie guy, Caspar. And I mean, so we have the kind of Financial Times behind us a little bit, but we are trying, well, we are very independent still, and trying to just kind of grow. And
that's what they all say. No.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I used to work for a Swedish tech site, which was actually part of Dagens Industri, which no one outside of Sweden perhaps knows of. But and that wasn't as independent, but we tried to be very independent too. But we were sitting in the same office. At least now we're not sitting in the same office, and I'm definitely not. Obviously.
I was gonna say none of us are sitting in the same office for the most part these days. So
Right.
No, true.
And so do you have a background in healthcare? Is that your kind of area of interest, or technology?
No, I mean, yes,
Right.
it's an interest, definitely. But I mean, from beginning, I'm kind of, well, what have I done? I mean, I'm a management consultant from beginning. I was working for Accenture a couple of years in London, and I realized that management consultancy was not my cup of tea. So I moved back to Sweden and became a journalist, and I've been trying to get back at them ever since. No, I haven't.
Yeah.
But no. So then I got into the whole kind of startup scene and started writing about that in 2015.
Yeah.
And I think at the time in Sweden, at least, I mean, health tech was kind of, it's starting to bubble a bit. I mean, you had Kry, or Livy, as you call it in the UK. I mean, they had just started off really. So I remember having lunch with Johannes Schildt in 2016, I think it was, and we were just talking about, you know, telemedicine. I mean, it was really in the beginning in Sweden. So even if I never really thought of myself as a health tech reporter, I mean, health tech was already by then quite a big thing in the Nordics.
What's that big tech conference where in Sweden there's a big tech conference that there's a fellow from California that moved to Sweden and set it up, isn't there?
Yeah, Tyler Crowley. Yeah, so that's the Stockholm Tech Festival that it's once a year, but he also does monthly meetups. And actually, that was a Stockholm Tech Festival was with me and Eugene met up for the first time on stage.
That's right.
So, but yes, he's
the
done
good
really
old days
well.
of travel. The good old days of travel and hugging people and
But Tyler Crowley has done well because he's I mean, he moved to Sweden quite early, before there were any kind of tech media writing about the startup scene there. And I would say that he was probably one of the key people why the Stockholm tech scene today is so vibrant.
Yeah.
So that's quite amazing. But
Yeah, 'cause I followed him. He was kind of the straight man on a podcast out of California with Jason Calacanis. And I used to, like, when I first became an entrepreneur, that was like my go-to like Bible of a podcast, and I listened to, and he was kind of the straight man, like Calacanis was the kind of and then he says, all of a sudden out of nowhere, he just announced he was going to move to Sweden and to set up the company or something. I think he had a girlfriend there. I don't know what the story was, but
and now he actually, I mean, he lives half.
He's in Asia now, right?
Thailand. Pardon?
Yeah, he's in Asia now, right?
Yeah, he's in Thailand. He's running a hotel there, I think. Yeah. So, but he's a nice guy, and he's doing really well for himself, even in like now with coronavirus crisis. I mean, he still has these meetups every month and so on, and yeah.
So how does one, because you mentioned you went, I'm actually just curious, because Jim and I are doing this meticulously unproduced thing, right? But how does one go from consulting to become a journalist, right? Like what was the trigger and
well, actually, I mean, well,
that's why I'm asking. No.
Okay, this is a long story, so I'm going to do a really, really, really short version. But
30-second pitch.
Yeah, I went to Israel with a few friends, and they were all journalists, so they were all kind of dragging me along to these kind of interviews and stuff. But what I realized was that I had as many questions as they did. So in the end, they were like, "Well, why don't you just become a journalist?" And at the time, I said, "So well, I already done a BA and an MA in 2 different areas, and I don't know if I have any. I mean, can I really study again?" And then I found this course that was just a year and a half. So then, yeah, I became a journalist, and it wasn't as hard as everyone was saying. That I mean, I don't know if you know that about journalism elsewhere, but in Sweden anyway, it's really difficult to get a job as a journalist. But so I'm kind of grateful that things has worked out. But it's one of those jobs. I think it's great because you get to meet all these people, and they are obviously telling you about both the problems, but also, I mean, what they've been doing well. And it's just great to follow these kind of startups and companies, and so much happens in just a few years. So that's been amazing.
So I know you kind of mentioned Cree, right? Am I pronouncing it right? Yeah. But you've been covering kind of Europe wide, right? And Jim and I had these discussions, right? Like US market, European market, especially in digital health, right? And we've kind of talked about the fact that because it's, you cross kind of the old proverbial borders from, Belgium to Netherlands, or from Finland to Sweden, the systems are different. The money flows are different. What are you seeing as a journalist, right? I mean, you've interviewed so many startups on the scaling part of it.
Well, I think that's really interesting. I mean, a key question for Europe, really, because you have the ones like, as we mentioned, Cree, who's managed to do it, who managed to scale in both like the UK, France, Norway, and spread out in Germany now as well. But then you have others that's saying, well, actually, Europe is really, really difficult place to scale at. So let's not go there. Let's go to the US straight away, or let's go to the Middle East, which has a great growth potential. I mean, so I think perhaps with this kind of, with Europe's system of having a very kind of old machinery as well, of us having had a health system for so long, it's really difficult to change it as well.
Right.
But then perhaps Europe is changing, because you can see that. I mean, I know that you mentioned DIGA in Germany last week, just very quickly, and I mean that is a sign that the government in Germany really wants to open up the system to actually bring in digital solutions. And I mean, if that could happen elsewhere in Europe, perhaps it would be easier to scale. But as you can see now, I mean, Babylon Health, for example, they're going straight to the US. Others are looking at Asia and so on. So I still think it's a few years to go.
Do you think, I mean, it's an interesting point you bring up, like on Cree and Johannes, right? Because I mean, they've been working really, really hard to expand out in Europe, right? And I think it takes persistent dedication, understanding all the systems versus say, well, let's just jump to US, 330 million people, contiguous market, go, right? So does it take certain types of entrepreneurs in Europe? Like, I mean, you talk to entrepreneurs every day, right? Or every other day. Like, I'm diving in a little deeper on this topic because it's been fascinating me as an American living in Europe for 9 years ongoing, how hard it is actually.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, Johannes is obviously Johannes Schildt at Cree is obviously like a special person. He kind of is really good at fundraising, and he's really good at kind of handling those kind of discussions and so on. So perhaps, I mean, that's necessary, obviously, but that would be necessary in the US as well, I
Yeah,
suppose. But maybe you just need, I don't know. I think you have to just decide, right, where you're going to go. And as Cree decided that we're going to go in Europe. But I think it's probably going to be as hard if you decide that you're going to go to the US, because the US is further away as well. I mean, you have the time difference, which I think is actually a difficulty when you're sitting with one team in say in San Diego and one team in London. I mean, it's or even worse in Helsinki. I mean, because the hours in between is just really
right.
difficult.
You
So
know, I think it'd be fascinating as a future article or something if you ever not that you're looking for ideas, but like is to actually map. Because my theory on it is like take Eugene. I just went from New Jersey to Barcelona, right? And you know,
Hey, New Jersey was temporary, my friend.
Sorry, so he went Berlin.
I'm kidding.
to whatever, you know, and then my own company, Health Speaking, we went from we kind of followed the pharmaceutical companies, so we went from Ireland to like Belgium to Netherlands to Portugal, but that was all demand. Like it was based on who was interested in implementing the projects, and like I think like like for example you going to Barcelona, right? Like how much of that is driven by personal, kind of you love the culture.
Completely personal. In this case, this is completely personal. Our business is US focused, right? So and we have to adjust to the hours, and it's a completely personal choice. So
I wonder how many times so for me, like I'm fascinated. I'm maybe like yourself, I'm a traveler. I love to go places. I love to see new cities. So from the beginning, and the fact that I'm in a small country, I had to build my company to survive in like lots of little markets, and I didn't want to go to the US until I had more experience with the technology and the platform and more evidence of what we were doing. So I just chose that path a little bit. But I wonder how much.
Yeah. But that's I think I spoke to an investor yesterday, and he was just mentioning that as well, that I mean for a few years ago you didn't need to go global so quickly, but nowadays you have to go almost straight away. And perhaps then, I mean, being a European in a small European country, it's not such a big step to go to another small European country. But I mean, if you decide on the US, you need to have a lot of capital. And I think that's actually one of the key, because I've seen companies like from Sweden trying to go to the UK only with too little money, and they just failed because they didn't have the money to make an impact in some way on the sector.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if you don't have the money, and obviously it's going to cost you even more if you're going to go to the US than the UK almost, because you know.
Right.
So I think it's maybe going to Norway from Sweden wouldn't cost that much because
Right.
you can drive over.
Yeah, no, and what about this whole like and are you going to follow a lot of companies? I imagine you follow a lot of companies in Stockholm. And do you write in both Swedish and English and German, or what do you write only in?
Yeah, I mean, Sifted is well, its language is English, because obviously, I mean, otherwise my editors wouldn't be able to read it. I think they maybe speak Spanish as well, but not anyway, not Swedish. So I write only in English now, and but I don't only cover the Nordics, but I cover the Nordics with companies, with all the kind of companies. I mean,
Right.
but not actually. I mean, health tech, I do the whole European continent. So, I mean, it's difficult because obviously, as you know, health tech is huge, and especially in like Europe. How can you manage to just be one person doing a health tech? So,
How many emails a day do you get from startups and pitches?
oh, I don't know actually. I mean,
That was a deep breath. Oh.
yeah, I think I think actually PR people are. I mean, I don't mind PR people. I mind when PR, well, you know, when they don't actually know you and they just send out all these kind of cold emails, and so you kind of. I think the problem is actually the startups, they disappear in between somewhere, and you just don't even find them almost.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like 5, 6 emails a day from startups and about 50 from PR people. I mean,
wow.
so yeah.
So I
Yeah.
had, I think this is to me also a valid discussion because we do have a lot of startups listening. I think we have no idea because it's unproduced. But maybe a little hint to the startups. I was actually chatting, texting with Chrissy Farr, who, her thing is just like with a startup goes to raise money with VCs, it's relationship building. Yes, the people themselves need to be, just awesome, driven, but it's a relationship. And for some reason, I think individuals assume that, well, PR people can do it on my behalf towards journalists. It's also relationship building. Like, I'm curious, like your thoughts on this, Mimi. Like you kind of mentioned, well, I don't mind PR people, but like, do you prefer one versus the other? Like, what's the approach?
Well, I think it's funny because I noticed since I started working for a tech site based in London. I mean, the UK PR people are so different from elsewhere because they expect you almost to want their help, and they're gonna set up everything, and they call you back afterwards. And for me, I'm so used to just picking up the phone and just giving someone a call, because I mean, obviously I already have a relationship with most CEOs that I want to have a relationship with in the startup world. Not all of them, obviously, not now, especially not with the whole European tech scene. But so I would say that if I would ask, or if startups would ask me how to get in touch, I mean, I would say, most of them nowadays go through LinkedIn and just have me added, and then just send me a message on there and saying, what do you think about this news? Would you be interested? And I think that's kind of an easy way, because then I can say yes or no without actually having to press, have to go into the emails, and it sounds harsh, but at least then we can create some kind of relationship, and then move on from there. And I could just be very straight with them to tell them, like, well, actually your company is too small, or you haven't actually even launched it, or whatever their issue is.
Honestly, and I know I don't want to generalize on the Nordics, but I found I'll still say the Nordics, to me, it's just the straightforwardness of people, like no bullshit. Like I love it.
Yeah, I don't think my boss always likes me for that. But it's
Hey, listen, I just saw something that you just wrote for Financial Times, your first piece, so they must like you. I mean, congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. But it's I think that we startup journalists perhaps shouldn't always be, stroking the startups' backs, if you see what I mean. I mean, we are kind of nice to startups, but maybe we shouldn't be so nice in the end, because obviously they need to. I mean, this sounds harsh, but they need to learn as well that as soon as they grow a little bit bigger, we're gonna turn around and try to find what's wrong with them. And if you just looking at like Babylon Health, for example, I mean, it's like all startups have this kind of honeymoon period, right? Everyone loves them, they're doing great, and then kind of like a year and 2, 3, 4 years in, people are starting doubting them because they do one little mistake, and then all of a sudden you're trying to find all the things they're doing wrong. And it's not just media, it's also like everyone else.
I mean, there's more users, there's more people that like you, but there's more people that don't like you, right?
But I always think startups, I equate startups as like like, as like raising a child, like that's, you've heard me say that before, but a lot of people use it and it's like, you got a baby and you teach them how to walk and they kind of stand up okay. And maybe they can say a few words and, and they can kind of smile and react. And before you know it, they can go to the bathroom on their own and, they can communicate in some ways. And as they kind of go through and then they become, they hate their parents and they everything they do is wrong, they kind of go through these phases, but you kind of have to be really nice to startups because they just aren't, just like children, like they don't have the wherewithal to handle, everything the world has to throw at them. So be nice to startups maybe.
Yeah, but there is, well, I do believe in that, but I also think that, I remember, the Swedish journalists core, all of them, not all of them, but when Spotify was growing up, kind of, and I know that people were obviously trying to find out things about them, but it was like, if you're a startup and you shut the door in the face of journalists, we're gonna start digging anyway. So perhaps we want to be nice, but maybe if you as a startup actually go head to head with your problems, talk about it. Discuss it in media even. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that actually, kind of being open about those things will actually create an even more a likability, both amongst the users, but also among journalists. And I think that's the way forward.
One thing I always say, like, corporations don't have a soul, right? People have a soul. And but I would say startups still have a soul because it's generally run by a few founders, right? And the soul of that company, the startup, is still the founders. And I think that's what, to me, it's actually interesting that Mimi brought it up, because I think as a company grows or a startup grows and there's hundreds of people, what's that soul, right? What's that soul of a company? So I got
when did you lose it? Is it after 100 million euros, or is it
I'm getting philosophical. It's 8 p.m. here. I'm used to doing this from New Jersey during the day. So
you're kind of, what's the soul of a startup? I like it.
So I have to ask, and we don't say, the situation the whole society is going through right now, but you are in Sweden, and it's been highly, on one side, contested, the strategy, on the other side, praised by some. I'm just kind of curious what's happening on the ground. Like, well,
I don't know. I'm in the countryside. Nothing's happening here.
You're hiding. Okay.
Yeah, no. I think that people are a little bit more concerned than before, obviously. We don't usually, we try not to go on public transport if we don't need to. And I myself had to go on the tube for a couple of weeks ago, and it was loads of people on it. And you can start feeling like, wow, there's too many people in here. But then, people do go to restaurants. It's not continuing as normal, but I think when people were really worried in obviously in springtime and so on, now people are starting hugging each other again. Swedes, we always hug each other, like the French kiss each other on the cheeks. This is our thing to do.
Yeah. This is why I love Sweden. I'm a hugger, so I love Sweden.
But that's obviously not very good now. So, so I think that maybe we are a bit more calm than most places in Europe, or elsewhere as well. But I think that I don't know. They say that there won't be a second wave of COVID here in Sweden, as it looks right now. But who knows? And I think, with the whole way of dealing with it, time will tell who did it well, who didn't do it well. And I think that whatever way you deal with it, people are dying, right? So it's going to be really hard to say what was right and wrong in the end.
What I like about it is the decisiveness, like, they kind of, the fact that the community got together. My head of Europe for my company is in Stockholm, is in Sweden. So, and I remember from the beginning, they would just seem like she would describe it as very joined up with, what the administration, the government wanted to do. So they seemed to get ahead of the idea that you needed to have the society's trust to be able to do anything, and you weren't going to get everybody, so not everyone was going to love you no matter what you did. Whereas everyone else was trying to please, became very, obviously in the States, it became very political, or they try like, let's try everything. It's a little bit of opening up and a little bit of mass and a little bit of whatever. And then you don't know.
I mean, it's going to be playing, I keep saying whack-a-mole, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, just this morning, I think Spain announced that we started saying before Mimi joined that, restaurants, bars will be closed for 15 days, so it's going to be on and off, but.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because we had like a press conference every day. I don't know if that's normal elsewhere, but I mean, every day, it can't be any news every day, right? But we're gonna keep on having this press conference just to remind people that it's still an issue, right? And it's but it's sweet that people actually do think that we're getting together, but doing this, managing this together. But I think like in the UK, I mean, people have been queuing to go to the supermarket, and that's a reality that we haven't seen at least in Sweden at all, which is
this was crazy. I mean, I remember when we first landed in March in US. I mean, there were lines like crazy everywhere. It's like it was insane. So anyway, let's go on a brighter note a little bit. I don't know. I just got sad that I won't be able to hug people.
Before we go happy, I want to talk greenwashing. I love this. So your article was like on greenwashing, the startups. Because I think, the fact that you go out and make a claim, like you make a claim, I guess the theory, right, is that startups would go make a claim that they were doing something sustainable, and and then they couldn't really back it up, or their numbers are off by like 1 million or something, or 1 million carbon. Wasn't that the article? That was a thesis.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that. I think it's really an interesting question because most startups, they don't obviously. I think most startups that call themselves impact believe that they have an impact.
Right.
But I also think that perhaps investors are not that great at actually checking them. I mean, and really controlling what they are doing is actually as impactful as they say they are.
Right.
And
right.
I mean, obviously, I was probably a little bit, not harsh in this article, but obviously, Voi scooters, they made a mistake in the campaign for a couple of years ago, a year or so ago, where they happened to add 3 zeros to the kind of impact they had with CO2 emissions. I mean, very few big companies would let that slip. No one actually would.
Right.
But in this case, yes, there are a few reports, but nothing else happened, right? So that's fine. But I think it's also interesting that they actually, electric scooters, you all heard the discussion, right? That they maybe are not as green as they say they are, and so on.
Right.
But they estimated that that each and every journey with a Voi was actually replacing a car journey, and that's not true because it's only like 14% or something like that. That's
right.
But but because they saw it in the future, it would be like that. So I think that
on the fun scale, scooters are much funner. Like
Jim has a lot of stories on those, and I was just gonna kind of add to that because I saw a tweet, this was a while ago. If you torture data long enough, it will confess to anything, right? And so it's it's a little bit of the kind of the startup mentality that you're describing, right? Let's torture this data to make this sound good.
The one, or you use it like a drunk uses a lamppost. You remember that one?
No.
Data like a drunk uses a lamppost. More for support than illumination. That's
okay, cool. But I mean, that's so true, though. I mean, it's like when people are raising money, right? They learn how to only show the kind of data that's actually showing that they are doing okay, right? So. Right. But I think that perhaps, I mean, it's an honest mistake, and perhaps as a startup founder, you probably believe that you are making a huge impact.
Right.
And so it's more up to investors, I think, to actually find them out. But what was my key point as well, I think, in this article was that for very green areas like food waste, etc., no one is looking, because I mean, how could you ever cheat with food waste? And I
Right.
think that's, it's just one of those things that I think we should always try to be a little bit more skeptical about these kind of numbers. And because sustainability is such a hot topic right now, I mean,
Right.
obviously everyone wants to show themselves as being sustainable, and we should therefore
Yeah.
be a little bit more rigid perhaps when we check
Yeah,
them.
yeah. This whole like we were just paying someone to kind of authenticate all of our numbers on our sustainability initiatives. Like we paid some independent group to do like our carbon, emissions calculations, and that way, we had some, so someoe's making
A
money off
third
of,
party.
yeah, doing the numbers for you.
Job creation is called.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm the timekeeper, and I think we can do this for hours with you, Mimi. But maybe just I know you've been covering Europe now for, I guess, 2 years, and mainly in digital health. Maybe just some kind of nuggets what you're seeing in the European market. What do you think? The situation we're in, has that sped things up? Like a little bit of insights from kind of on the ground, for lack of a better term, as you talk to cross Europe, cross
Yeah. Okay, so I would say this. I
your
think it's
predictions.
very, very hard to actually, eh, say anything for the whole region. I think it's almost impossible because every country is so different. But what I can say is, I think it's interesting and what to keep an eye on is the European Union, the European Commission, and the regulations, because more and more I think that countries will actually follow the regulations from the European Union, not in the UK perhaps. But one of those examples is for CBD and medical cannabis. And obviously, when the European Commission decides how to treat CBD, then that will be picked up by most other countries in the EU. So I think those are things to maybe look out for in the future as well. And we could
Yeah.
probably see
Ride the
some more.
regulation wave a bit. And do you see
Yeah.
something like a DIGA? I mean, Germany took a big step, being, I kind of said it, tweeted like all eyes are on Germany right now in this sense. Will this then go at the European Union level? Do you see that spreading to the neighbors in the DACH, or?
Yeah, I see that could definitely spread, but I don't think it's going to come to European Union, because that's going to, I mean, I think still most countries believe that to pay for digital solutions like they do in Germany is going to cost more money than actually save more money. But I think they're wrong. But I think each and every country is going to have to try to get their own DGAS in place. And I think that's going to take time. And I also think it's going to take time for Germany to actually make it work, because they are not that digitalized at the moment, and they don't really know how doctors would actually prescribe this, apps and so on. So I think there is going to be some issues.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of education to do, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, it's still prescribed.
We look like 5 years out. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how, depending on where the startups come from, like our story that we started at the beginning, what digital health solutions are available in that market. So you're going to have this kind of, in Europe, you're going to have this kind of fascinating, like little kind of petri dishes of like, Portugal does telehealth this way, and Sweden does, whatever remote monitoring this way. And, some of the frameworks and regulatory systems might start to norm out, but it's probably going to have, that's what I would think, like in 5 years, there's not going to be any real big consolidation of that. It doesn't feel like the frame, they'll.
But every household will have CBD lotion.
Yeah, obviously.
That's it. Anyway, well, on that note, that was loads of fun. I hope it was for you that late in the evening. And for all our listeners and watchers, hit that subscribe button. We actually growing every week now, Jim. It's not stagnant anymore, so that's pretty fascinating.
Congratulations, guys.
Is it Tusen Tak, Mimi? Tusen Tak.
Tusen tack. See you.